Hi, I'm Mark, creator of SpeedCurve. Today we're going to look at the main dashboard. So what we're looking at here is three websites. We're pretending to be the Guardian newspaper and we're comparing ourselves against two key competitors, the New York Times and the Huffington Post. Now once a day SpeedCurve will run web page tests in the background, and this loads a whole lot of different web browsers and points them at different pages and tracks the key results as those pages load. And what we're seeing here is the median load time across all those browsers and different web pages. And we can see that the Guardian is sitting in the middle of the pack at the moment in terms of the competitors, down here at 16.5 seconds for the latest test. As those browsers load the web pages, we also record video and give you these film strips, which are a really great way to understand what the user experience actually feels like for a person visiting these websites. And we can see that the Guardian homepage up here loads at a similar time to the Huffington Post. But as we scroll across, we get a sense of just how long it takes to load each page and what it feels like as the images kind of load in here along the top on the Guardian. And we can see that towards the end here, Huffington Post is still kind of loading right out to 25 seconds. Below that, we do some analysis on the number of requests that your website kind of makes. So this is all the HTML and CSS and JavaScript that's loaded, and we can see for the Guardian across the three templates we make an average of 232 requests, which is actually 2.3 times larger than the average. We're loading 1.3 megabytes of images and content, and we've got an overall Google page speed score of 89 out of 100. Now we also do some analysis on images and check how well optimized they are. We can see here that the Guardian's images could be still squished a lot further. We could actually save 1.62 megabytes or 23% off our current images. And a loose calculation here, if we were doing that across 10 million visitors, we could actually save $400 here in terms of average bandwidth rate from popular CDNs. Below that we have a histogram that shows us the global and category sort of benchmark speeds. So in the background here we have all websites monitored by SpeedCurve. You can see that the top of the hump here is between 4 and 10 seconds, so that's where most web pages are loading. In the foreground we have just the websites that are in the news category. Below we have just the top 5 out of those news category. And we can see where our websites sit in relationship. So we can see that the news websites here on average are quite a bit slower than just in general websites that SpeedCurve are monitoring, and our three websites here are actually all a little bit slower than the average newspaper sites across the globe. We have a few more kind of details here for those top 5 sites in terms of requests and average size. Below that we have the test settings for SpeedCurve. So these settings are the same across every test that SpeedCurve does. This is so we can do competitive benchmarking across the different websites and give you kind of relative performance. Currently we're running this at the average US connection speed of 6.7 megabits down or 1 megabit up, and our testing location is from the US West Coast. So scrolling back up, we can start to dig down into the details. So on the top right hand side here, you'll see that we've got the fully loaded time. So we can actually track the different browser events that load across our templates. So we can actually break down our back-end time. And you can see here that all three sites actually start out in very similar states. So Huffington Post is actually doing really well and is quite often the fastest here. When we look at our start render time, there's actually a reasonable kind of spread across these. And when we look at our DOM complete, you can see that this is where the different sites start to pull apart from each other. And the Huffington Post is now a little bit kind of slower. and when we get up to our fully loaded time, it's still the slowest. So the Huffington Post is obviously loading more assets, doing more JavaScript, just taking generally longer to paint its layouts. So even though the back end was really fast, our fully loaded time paints quite a different picture. And usually you can see that reflected down here in the timelines as well, where we can see that Huffington Post is doing an okay job. In terms of user experience, they're all load at quite a similar time, around the 2.5 to 3 second range, that as a user I can start to experience it. But definitely Huffington Post, all three websites are still loading out here right to the back of the timeline. Now we can also drill down into a whole lot of other reports in the dashboard here, and expanding this navigation at the top, we actually get a whole lot of options that we can combine in different ways to get different reports. So the power of SpeedCurve is that you can intersect any of these reports together. So if we look at just the Guardian, and let's push that out to the last 3 months, our view actually changes from comparing the three sites to now just looking at the Guardian. And what we see here is a histogram of the load times for the Guardian and the mean kind of load times as well. So we can see we've still got our 16.7 seconds here, but now we can see on a given day what was the slowest time, 60 seconds, our fastest time, 12 seconds, and then our 25th percentiles, our median, and the 75th percentile. So this is like a vertical kind of histogram every day for the range of tests that run for our websites. You'll also see 2 vertical lines here, so anytime you make changes to SpeedCurve that might affect front-end performance, you can actually come in here and add annotations and kind of events. So I've just put a couple of example events in here. If we want to, we can expand open annotate here. Let's imagine that we've added some sprite sheets to the Guardian to improve the way we're loading images. So sprite sheets, let's imagine we actually rolled that out last Wednesday, and we can add that in here, and now we can kind of monitor before and after performance for any specific changes that we might be making on the front end. So we can also drill down further. So if we look at the Huffington Post, we can also choose from our different template types. So if we look at a section page here, we can drill down into that part of the site. And now, rather than a histogram, we're actually seeing individual load times for different browsers. So across the top here we have IE9, Chrome, and we can also see that there's some quite dramatic changes that happened around the 8th of September here, where especially IE saw a big drop from 60 seconds down to kind of 15 seconds in terms of overall load time. And actually in general all browsers seem to improve around this date, so we'll dig into that shortly. As you scroll down, you get to see the different timelines for the different browsers. So this is IE9 versus Safari down here, and we can see that actually Firefox seems to load quite a lot slower than the other browsers as well. Below that we track the Google PageSpeed score over time, so you can see how that's getting slower and faster. We also track an individual breakdown of all the content requests. So you can see here it's 96 images being loaded, 10 CSS style sheets, and this is a good way to track changes in the build profile of your website. So as you roll out changes and optimize your site, you should be able to see changes here, both in the number of requests and the assets you've got on your site, and also the overall size of your web pages. So let's dig back into what was happening kind of here around the 8th of September. So wherever you see a dot in any of these graphs throughout SpeedCurve, they actually link through into specific reports. So I can click this event here and go through to this individual page. So it takes me to that specific test, which was IE9 on the 4th of September. We get to see the timeline here of exactly how that particular test loaded in the browser, and we can dig into a simplified waterfall. So we see again our key browser events, and then we can dig into a big huge long waterfall since there's so many requests being made, and we can actually find out what's kind of going on with this particular web page. So again, we can see the breakdown of requests and the total size. Now it looks like what was blowing out the page here is actually this request here. So we can see that there's some JavaScript here, a socket request by the looks of it, doing some AJAX XH. So it looks like there was an AJAX request there that was potentially kind of hanging and blowing out the time in IE9 and kind of other browsers. Now we can actually drill through the whole waterfall, or we can actually come up here and sort our waterfall as well. So we can actually sort our waterfall by the slowest requests. So if we do that, that actually pulls up the requests that are taking the longest in our waterfall, and it can be a nice kind of easy way to, rather than digging into all the details of the waterfall, just pull up which requests are the slowest. So if we go back to our graph, we can look for what are the changes that happen between that report and our next event here. So again, we can click any dot, come in and have a look at this report. Website certainly is loading kind of faster. Again, we saw our different event types and asset types here. So we've got images that we can kind of look at. And you can also see here that we're breaking down each individual JPEG, an image, and telling you how much this could be optimized for, or if it's CSS, will tell you what the GZIP size is. So it's a good way to kind of validate your kind of assets as well. Again, we can come up here and we can actually sort by savings as well. So this will tell you which kind of images we can save the most bandwidth on. So this particular image we could actually be saving 23 kilobytes on. So that gives you a bit of an overview of the SpeedCurve dashboard. And again, we can kind of pivot any of these reports to get really interesting insights into our front-end performance. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to send me an email or ask a question on Twitter. Cheers.